what would be the long-term impact of falling commodity prices and reduced agriculture exports on rural communities, which are struggling in so many ways already?
Well, I think we know it would be very bad, and we've seen periods in American history where that's happened, and it can be extremely tough on farmers in rural communities.
And if they lose the markets that they've developed, I was over in China talking to some of their defense leaders a few years ago about North Korea, and was walking through the airport, and there was a group, just by coincidence, it was a flight back home, the flight to Chicago and then go back home to Indiana, a group of Indiana soybean farmers who are traveling the country, developing the market. And what happens to rural communities if China just looks up and says, you know, we found more reliable suppliers?
As we discussed, it can be very tough.
So as Fed chairman, what would you say to all those farmers who are really nervous, really concerned about what their future will be? They look to us for smart policies, for reasonable policies. Is there anything you can say about this trade war that's going on right now?
I should again start by saying that it's really not the Fed's role. We don't do trade policy. That's Congress and the administration. You know, I think if the current process of negotiation back and forth results in lower tariffs, that'll be a good thing for the economy. If it results in higher tariffs, then I think, you know, I hardly need to tell you what higher tariffs would do for agricultural producers. Agriculture is an area where we lead the world in productivity, and we're great exporters. And, you know, you'd be very hard hit by these tariffs.
If this goes on for a couple more years, what would be the impact on our rural communities?
I think certainly it would be very tough on the rural communities, and you know, I think we'd feel that at the national level too.
Let me also ask you about opioids, which you've mentioned in workforce participation. My state's been deeply impacted by the opioid crisis. Last summer, during one of her final appearances before Congress, I spoke with former Chair Janet Yellen about the opioid epidemic and its connection to not just health outcomes, but also economic and employment outcomes. The impact of opioids on the labor participation rate, which has declined from 66 to 63% over the last decade. She agreed there was a connection and noted surveys suggest that many prime-age individuals who are not actively participating in the labor market are involved in prescription drug use. You know, I look at these people we've lost, the next teachers, the next doctors, the next electricians, the next nurses. What do you see as the impact of the opioid epidemic on our workforce participation and, in general, the economy?
You know, it's a terrible human tragedy for many communities, certainly for the individuals and their families involved. I think from an economic standpoint, some high percentage of the prime age people who are not in the labor force, particularly prime age males who are not in the labor force, are taking painkillers of some kind. I think the number that Alan Kruger, who's a professor, came up with was 44% of them. So it's a big number. It's having a terrible human toll on our communities, and also it matters a lot for labor force participation and economic activity in our country.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.